that they're really
opportunities with a broad range of comprehensive financial products and personalized customer service.
Good evening, I'm Jim Lehrer. On the NewsHour tonight, a summary of today's news, an interview with the Philippine ambassador about his country's U.S.-assisted war against terrorists. A look at today's Supreme Court arguments about managed care health plans, a report on rebuilding the section of the Pentagon damaged in the 9/11 attacks, and a Shape of the World conversation with Trudy Rubin of the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
Imagine a world where we're not diminishing resources, we're growing them. Ethanol, a cleaner burning fuel, made from corn. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
And by SBC Communications. In the last year alone, SBC employees volunteered more than 6 million hours, which means even when we're not working to improve communications, we're doing something to help improve communities. SBC Communications.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
A federal grand jury returned a new indictment today against the alleged shoe bomber. Richard Reed was charged with attempted murder and 7 other crimes. The British citizen allegedly tried to light explosives in his sneakers on a flight from Paris to Miami last month. Fellow passengers subdued him and the plane landed in Boston. Today, Attorney General Ashcroft said it was clear Reed had received training from Al-Qaeda.
Reed's indictment alerts us to a clear, unmistakable threat that Al-Qaeda could attack the United States again. The lessons for Americans are undeniable. We must be prepared, we must be alert, we must be vigilant. Al-Qaeda trained terrorists may act on their own or as part of the terrorist network, but we must assume that they will act.
Reed could get life in prison if he's convicted. He remains jailed outside Boston. An Algerian man was sentenced today to 24 years in prison in a failed bomb plot. It involved a plan to attack Los Angeles International Airport around January 1st, 2000. The man sentenced in New York supplied cash and fake IDs to the plotters. Police foiled the scheme when they arrested another Algerian in Washington State in December 1999. He trained at Osama bin Laden's camps in Afghanistan. The U.S. military has increased its presence in the Philippines to fight terrorism. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld said today more than 200 U.S. troops are already there. He said several hundred more would follow. They'll train and support Philippine soldiers battling Muslim guerrillas. The rebels currently hold 2 Americans and a Filipino hostage. We'll have more on this story in a few minutes. In Afghanistan today, U.S. intelligence officers questioned a man who walked into the Marine base at Kandahar yesterday. He claimed to have information on the finances of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. In Washington, Secretary Rumsfeld said finding Osama bin Laden and the Taliban leader Mullah Omar remains a challenge.
Lots of information's coming in. How could I say answer to that? Any specific information? It's all specific. Most of it's wrong, but it's all specific. It is what we're trying to know is where somebody is, and we don't know precisely where he is. We have a good sense in the country. We still believe they're in the country. We're still working on that basis, although we are looking some other places as well from time to time.
In other developments, a 3rd plane load of Taliban and Al-Qaeda prisoners arrived at the U.S. Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. A 4th plane left Afghanistan. The general overseeing the operation in Guantanamo said some of the prisoners have vowed to kill an American there if they can. And in Pakistan, searchers found the remains of the last of 7 U.S. Marines. They were killed in a plane crash last week. A gunman killed 3 people today in the Appalachian School of Law in the southwestern Virginia town of Grundy. The dead included the dean of the school, a professor, and a student. 3 students were critically wounded. The suspect was captured. A doctor at the scene said he was a student upset about his grades. The former lead auditor of Enron's books met with House investigators today in Washington. His lawyer said David Duncan was cooperating with the congressional inquiry. The Arthur Anderson accounting firm fired him yesterday. It said he organized the destruction of records last October. That was after the Securities and Exchange Commission asked Enron for accounting information. There was more financial fallout from Enron's collapse today. The banking firm J.P. Morgan Chase said it lost more than $300 million in the fourth quarter of last year. It blamed bad loans to Enron and Argentina. On Wall Street today, the J.P. Morgan losses and a technology sell-off pushed stocks lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 211 points, or 2%, to close at 9712. The NASDAQ index dropped 56 points to close at 1944, a loss of 2.8%. In other economic news, the Labor Department reported consumer prices fell last month by 0.2%. For the year, they rose just 1.6%, due mostly to the largest drop in energy costs since 1986. And the Federal Reserve said industrial production fell 3.9% last year. It was the first yearly decline since 1991. The U.S. Supreme Court will decide if states can force outside reviews of HMO decisions. Today, it heard the case of an Illinois woman with a rare nerve condition. After an independent review, her insurance company had to reimburse her for corrective surgery. 40 states allow such reviews, and in most cases, the conclusions are binding. The HMOs want a single national standard. The airlines will meet a deadline Friday for screening all checked bags for explosives. Transportation Secretary Mineta confirmed that today. Initially, he had voiced doubt the industry could be ready as early as Congress wanted. But in a Washington speech today, he said airlines and airports would be ready.
Now, working with the airlines, we have taken the necessary action to meet this requirement. Every available explosive detection system, EDS machine, will be used to its maximum capacity. Where we do not yet have EDS resources in place, we will use other options outlined in the law.
And those other options include matching bags to passengers, using bomb-sniffing dogs, and increasing hand searches by security officers. 3 former members of the Symbionese Liberation Army were arrested today in California and Oregon. They face murder charges in a bank robbery in California in 1975. Newspaper heiress Patricia Hearst took part. The radical group had kidnapped her a year earlier. She served 2 years in prison for a later bank job before President Carter commuted her sentence. Now some details on the Philippines story, the opening of another front in the war on terrorism. We start with some background from Spencer Michaels.
Since last fall, a small number of American military advisors or consultants has joined the Philippine Army in its fight against Muslim separatists linked to Al-Qaeda. Until now, the details of the mission have been kept mostly out of public view.
Do you find the Philippine Army so far? That's how that.
Today, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld announced that the American mission to the Philippines, a former U.S. colony, will expand soon. Within a month, the U.S. contingent will number around 600, including 150 Navy SEALs, Army Green Berets, Marines, and Special Forces. At the Pentagon, Rumsfeld used the words training exercises to describe the mission.
At the present time, we have, I believe, the last time I looked, something like 240 or 50 Americans, military personnel in the country. They are located in several locations in the country. More are going in. They are there for training purposes. They are there for logistics purposes. They are there for an exercise with the Philippine government. As you know, we have a very long military-to-military relationship between the United States and the Philippines. And I expect that there will be several hundred more people going in.
The American forces will help train more than 1,000 Filipino soldiers in their fight against Muslim extremists. The targeted group is Abu Sayyaf, one of several armed Islamic groups in the largely Catholic country. Based in the southern islands of Basilan and Jolo, Abu Sayyaf kidnapped foreigners for ransom, often killing them in grisly fashion. Last year's victims included American Guillermo Sobero. Two other Americans, missionaries from Kansas, Martin and Gracia Burnham, have been held since last May. Investigators believe Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda helped fund Abu Sayyaf in the early 90s and said bin Laden's brother-in-law met directly with the group. There's also a Philippine connection to Ramzi Youssef, the man linked to al-Qaeda and convicted of plotting and participating in the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Youssef once lived in this Manila apartment. In a 1995 raid, Philippine authorities found evidence of al-Qaeda plans to crash a jet into the CIA headquarters, blow up several American airliners, and assassinate the Pope. At the Pentagon, Secretary Rumsfeld was asked if Abu Sayyaf was involved in September 11th.
There is no question that there have been linkages between al-Qaeda and activities that have taken place in the Philippines. And second, the United States is clearly interested in al-Qaeda. We are interested in a lot more than al-Qaeda.
If I could follow all the documents, the cell phones, the laptops, the evidence that you've gathered, does any of that directly point to the involvement of Abu Sayyaf in the September 11th attacks? Does any of that support that at all?
I'm not in a position to respond. I don't know that I would want to if I happened to have gone through and reviewed all of that material.
Concern about terrorism in the Philippines is part of the administration worry about Islamic militancy throughout the region. Last month, Malaysian officials arrested 13 radical Muslims. They say the men contacted Zacharias Musawi, the alleged 20th hijacker, in September or October. Singapore has arrested 13 men as well, saying 8 trained in al-Qaeda camps. The Singapore government also released this alleged al-Qaeda videotape. It shows a train station believed to be one of the group's targets. Western embassies and American companies in Singapore were also on the list. And in Indonesia, the government believes al-Qaeda funded a terrorist training camp used by local Muslim militants. To help fund the new Philippine mission, President Bush in November committed $100 million in military aid to the government of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. But Arroyo told the NewsHour last November she did not ask for ground troops. Foreign combatants are both unpopular and banned in the Philippines.
You do not want the United States to send armed troops in there to help your army get rid of these people.
Well, I think that our armed forces are quite good in what they're doing. So what we really need would be really a technical assistance in equipment, materials, joint planning.
Defense Secretary Rumsfeld said the Philippine training exercises are scheduled to last 6 months.
And with us now is the Philippine ambassador to the United States, Albert Del Rosario. Mr. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
Have things changed since I had that interview with your president in terms of the situation on the ground in the Philippines and the need for U.S. assistance, military assistance?
Well, basically, Jim, what's happened is that the Abu Sayyaf, which has been operating in about 1 or 2 of the 7,000 islands, have been very elusive. And although the numbers of the group have been reduced from an estimated 1,200 to what is now purportedly at less than 100, we're talking about the core group now. The terrain and the dense forest have made the capture and the eradication of this group very difficult. And to cover this last mile, the Philippines has invited the United States to provide help in terms of technical assistance, in terms of advice, and in terms of training.
Now, many Americans are viewing this as a new step in the U.S. war against terrorism. How do the Philippines see what's going on, the introduction of more U.S. troops?
Well, I think we are grateful for the assistance from the United States, but I think the public should not view the Philippines as being in the category of some of the other countries being mentioned. We are not harboring terrorism. We are fighting terrorism, Jim.
Mm-hmm. And the U.S. Troops, there's a lot of terms that can be misused or misunderstood in this case. They are there to train, and Secretary Rumsfeld, as we just heard, to provide logistics, but they're also combat soldiers, are they not? Are they going to be armed, and if something happens, they can shoot back? Is that correct?
Well, the presence of U.S. Troops in the Philippines is not for combat purposes. They are supposed to observe and assist, and in the process of doing that, yes, they are armed, and they may defend themselves if so attacked.
Mm-hmm. This is a sensitive issue in the Philippines, is it not, having foreign troops, particularly from the United States, on the ground?
I think, Jim, that there is clearly a legal framework in terms of the Mutual Defense Treaty and the Visiting Forces Agreement that appropriately covers this activity.
But in terms of the politics of the Philippines, I read some things today that some people saying this is a violation of Philippine sovereignty, it's a violation of the Constitution, the U.S. soldiers should not come. I mean, how do you read that sort of thing?
Well, I think it's a matter of education. The U.S. Troops are there for essentially 3 missions. One is to provide assistance, training, and advice in terms of pursuing the Abu Sayyaf. The second is to be able to train this 1 or 2 light reaction companies in addition to that which has already been trained earlier. And of course, the third is to be able to conduct the joint military exercises under the Visiting Forces Agreement. That is actually a yearly occurrence.
Now, Abu Sayyaf, you said there are only about 100 of them left, still at large down there. Tell us about who are these people? Where do they come from? What do they believe in?
Well, the Abu Sayyaf are this is a splinter group of a much larger group which advocates the establishment of an independent Muslim state. The main group now is under a peace process, and this splinter group actually was formed by a former trainee of bin Laden from Afghanistan. And when he came back from Afghanistan in 1990, he started this group, and they started by their wave of terrorism by bombing churches and Christian groups. And then they went on to accelerate this terrorist activities in terms of engaging in kidnap for ransom activities. Subsequently, after this was founded by this person, Janjalani was his name.
Janjalani, yeah.
Yes. There was also a fellow called Khalifa, who happened to be the brother-in-law of bin Laden, who came to the Philippines to start several foundations purportedly for funding terrorism activity in the Philippines. Now, he was shut down his organizations were shut down by the government in 1995, I think it was. And after that, later on, a few years later, Janjalani was killed in a firefight. So there is documented evidence, Jim, that there is a historical link dating back to 1990 that this group is affiliated with the Al-Qaeda group. But after 1995, it becomes rather hazy and circumstantial in terms of that link. although in sometime last year, late last year, there was a bombing in Zamboanga, and the perpetrator who was caught, a fellow called Marvin Gionson, I believe. He was related to the Abu Sayyaf, and there were documentation found in his person that seemed to link him to the Al-Qaeda group. So there you are.
Okay. Well, why is it so hard to find these 100 people? What is it that the U.S. Military, what kind of expertise can they bring to this manhunt that has now been going on for several years now already in the Philippines?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, Jim, the terrain is very difficult.
Describe the terrain. What kind of terrain?
It's, I've not been there, but I'm told, and there's documentary evidence from the U.S. military itself that the terrain is difficult because you have mountains and you have dense jungle, and you have very heavy fog in that area. So I think looking for a band of less than 100 would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Now, in terms of intelligence, I think the Philippine forces have human intelligence, but it's not real time, for example. And it's
They find out something a little, 2 weeks too late, you mean?
That's right.
Yeah,
And before that, human intelligence gets its information back, and before the Philippine troops can mobilize and get transport to that area where the Abu Sayyaf may have been viewed, it's too late. They're not there anymore. So what we're looking for from the United States is equipment, real-time intelligence.
Technology that would help too as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the objective, I think, I might add, of this joint training is it gives the U.S. military exposure in terms of working in terrain like that, and the exchange is that the Philippine forces are able to train in terms of using modern equipment.
Is there any word at all, new word at all, on the Burnhams, the two captured American missionaries who are being held for ransom?
There are supposed to be sightings of the Burnhams, and they seem to be, they are physically weak, but they're still moving around, they're being moved around, and they are alive. And it is our prayer that the military and the cooperation between the Philippines and the United States will be able to safely rescue them, Jim.
Mr. Ambassador, much has been made, as you saw in the newspapers this morning, about this new arrangement. In other words, the decision to send more U.S. troops there. In the first place, is too much being made about this? I mean, is this, do you see in the Philippines the introduction of the U.S. troops, as many as 600, is this as big a deal there as it appears to be here for us because it relates directly to Afghanistan, or appears to?
I think the numbers would require some explanation. We do have a joint military exercise that is taking place at the same time as the pursuit of the Abu Sayyaf. Out of the 600 that you mentioned, only 100 or so are special forces. The other 500 are support and maintenance personnel, because they will also have aircraft and they will also have some other equipment there that need to be operated and maintained.
As a practical matter, would this military arrangement have even happened if there hadn't been September 11? I mean, would the Philippines have felt compelled in the atmosphere that existed before to ask the U.S. for this kind of help?
I think that in the context of what happened in September 11th, Jim, the terrorism per se is abominable. It's a scourge, and I think that the international coalition in pursuing the eradication of terrorism throughout the world was the September 11th was the catalyst for this.
And an impetus that led to this.
That's correct.
All right. Well, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jim. Enjoyed being with you.
Still to come on the NewsHour tonight, managed care before the U.S. Supreme Court, rebuilding the Pentagon, and Trudy Rubin of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Margaret Warner has the court story.
At issue before the Supreme Court today was whether a state, in this case Illinois, can force managed health care plans to abide by an independent review when there's a dispute with a patient. We get more on the case and today's proceedings from the NewsHour's regular court watcher, Jan Crawford Greenberg of the Chicago Tribune, and from Susan Denser of our health unit, a partnership with the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation. All right, Jan, tell us about this case. Tell us about this Ms. Moran.
Right, Deborah Moran was diagnosed in 1996 with a rare and very painful nerve condition in her right shoulder. At first, she had trouble blow drying her hair, but it progressed to the point where she couldn't even pick up a fork, without her husband helping her. She went to doctor after doctor through her HMO plan. She saw orthopedists, rehab doctors, physical therapists, but nothing, she said, alleviated or helped the pain. It always would come back. So she heard about this specialist in Virginia, and the specialist was doing a more aggressive, newer kind of surgery. And she explored that option. The specialist thought that Ms. Moran would be an ideal candidate for this kind of surgery, but the specialist was not in her HMO's network. So Ms. Moran went back to her primary care physician, who agreed that this surgery was medically necessary, recommended that she go ahead and have it. Her HMO, Rush Prudential, refused to pay for the cost and said, no, you need to see our network surgeons. We'll pay for that. It's a less complicated and less expensive surgery, but we think that's good enough and that's medically necessary. But the Rush-affiliated surgeons were proposing a treatment that they said only carried with it about a 1/3 chance of success, and also a 1/3 chance that something could go wrong, including possibly paralysis. Deborah Moran obviously didn't like those odds, so she decided to go ahead and pay for the surgery herself. She said she, maxed out her credit cards, borrowed money from other sources, and paid $95,000. Then she asked again.
And it was successful, I guess.
Right. And so she asked Rush again to pay for this. Rush declines. She went to state court to get a judge to order Rush to go through, which it had been declining to do too, to go through this independent review process so that an outside physician could look at her case to see, if she was right. And the state court ordered Rush to do that. The process began. The outside independent reviewing physician from Johns Hopkins Medical Center agreed with Moran and the specialist that the surgery was necessary. So Rush, the reviewer said, should pay for the claim. And then Rush changed its approach.
So then this, I gather, went through, she's now suing to get her money back, right. And the first court, ruled in Rush?
Rush then changed its approach a bit and raised a different argument in federal court. And then it said, look, we don't even, this state law is invalid. I mean, this independent reviewing process, that's just invalid. We don't have to pay for this procedure because a federal law, federal employee benefits law, supersedes or it takes precedence over this state law. So we don't have to go through this process at all. The federal district court agreed with Rush, but a federal court of appeals in Chicago disagreed, and it sided with Ms. Moran, and it said that the state law didn't conflict, the state law was valid. Rush took that appeal, took that case to the Supreme Court, and that's how we got here today.
All right, Susan, tell us about this federal law, because we hear a lot about this called ERISA, a very difficult acronym. What is this law?
It's the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. It was passed in 1974, and it was designed really because Congress wanted to encourage the provision primarily of pensions and other employee benefit plans. And it was worried that the states were nickeling and diming employers who often operated in multiple states with lots of independent state statutes that conflicted in many instances. So Congress said we need one overriding federal statute on employee benefits Therefore, it passed ERISA in 1974. Over time, it's come to also apply to other employee benefits other than pensions and retirement plans like health insurance. The critical issue, as Jan says in this case, is do the provisions of ERISA, which apply to employee benefits, override state statutes that pertain to insurance and the regulation of health care? Traditionally, the regulation of insurance and health care has been left to the states. However, ERISA itself also carves out some exceptions. And so now the parties are arguing over whether ERISA should apply in this case or whether the state law governing insurance, which HMO products are in most states, or whether it is regulation of health care, and therefore that is also under the purview of the state of Illinois in this case.
And some 40 states have passed some kind of Patient Protection Act, have they not, that provides for some kind of independent review process?
Exactly. 41 states now and the District of Columbia have provisions that allow for this independent review, as does Medicare, the federal benefits program for the elderly.
All right, so Jan, tell us about court today. I gather the lawyer for the HMO went first. What did he argue, and
right,
how
John
was
Roberts,
it received?
represented the HMO, and he said the state law is invalid because it conflicted with ERISA. I mean, obviously, just the sound of it, I mean, these cases, as Robert said today, can be exceedingly complicated. But this case, he said, was a straightforward one. States cannot require HMOs to abide by whatever decision an independent reviewer may make, because that's a different remedy for someone who may have a complaint about a denial of benefits. If you've got a complaint about your benefits being denied, you've got to look at ERISA. The federal law, that's the only remedy. This is a different remedy, Robert said, so therefore it's out the door, it's out the window. We've got to rely on ERISA.
Did any of the justices give them a hard time?
Well, several of the justices seemed inclined to do so. Justice Souter, Justice O'Connor even, and Justice Stevens, but they didn't really give him much resistance. They suggested, Justice O'Connor, for example, at one point said, well, what about insurance? I mean, as Susan said, is this really a law about HMO or employee benefits, or is it about insurance? And of course, that's the point that the lawyer for Deborah Moran tried to make when he stood up next.
So what happened?
Well, his main argument is that this isn't about employee benefits. We know that. That's the purview of ERISA. This is about insurance. This is a law regulating insurance. ERISA says, that's one of the exceptions, as Susan said. I mean, ERISA says insurance, that's the state's business. There's another Supreme Court case that suggests there may be exceptions to that. But his bottom line was that this is about insurance. And he said, you know, all Deborah Moran ever sought in this case is the benefits that she was entitled to, which, you know, he said saved her right arm. I mean, trying to make this to a very straightforward case like Roberts had done before. But at that point, Justice Scalia, Antonin Scalia, jumped right in and really framed the issues in this case. And he said, look, the question is who gets to decide if she is entitled to those benefits, or who gets to decide what are the benefits that she gets. So, you know, Moran says the states can decide. The states, you know, can set up these independent reviewing boards. Rush Prudential says, no, we've got this federal law, and that's what's supposed to govern here. So that's really what it boiled down to. I think Justice Scalia offered some resistance to Ms. Moran's lawyer, as did Justice Kennedy and even the Chief Justice to some degree. They seemed to suggest they were not willing to embrace this Illinois law, or by extension, maybe some of the other 39, 40 laws, too.
And there is a lot at stake here, Susan.
Absolutely. In fact, for all of these states that have passed these provisions, they view that as a very important protection against decisions being made that are not based on medical necessity, not really based on the medical evidence. Consumer advocates think that if the court rules in favor of the plans on this, in effect, it would void all of those. It could have the possibility, depending on how expansive the ruling is, that could void all of those state statutes, and that's very problematic. And even the health plan industry is conflicted on this, because it has embraced external review as a very important element that nudges people to looking truly at the issues of medical necessity. Is a procedure really medically necessary?
Rather than going to court.
Rather than going to court, but also understanding the true medical evidence that something works or doesn't work. So there's a lot at stake on all sides.
So if the court rules in favor of Rush, then the only way to get in these independent reviews would be for Congress to have to do something.
In effect, probably, depending again on what the court actually says. But in fact, that is a big issue at stake in the fight to pass a Patient's Bill of Rights. All of the provisions that have passed on the Hill have an external review provision in them with various differences. The health plans, as an industry, want a national external review provision. They want that very much, again, as a protection against excessive litigation and also nudging towards scientific practice of medicine. So whatever the court says, in fact, there could be at the end of this a legislative remedy that restores an external review process for all Americans, but at a federal level, and in fact getting at the very issue that ERISA was designed to attack, to have one overall national standard on that issue.
All right, well, thank you, Susan and Jan.
Thanks, Margaret.
Now rebuilding the Pentagon building after the 9/11 terrorism attack. Ray Suarez has that story.
When a hijacked jetliner sliced into the Pentagon on September 11th, Lee Evey was sitting in his office, supervising the completion of the first phase of a 20-year, $1.2 billion renovation of the Pentagon.
We were about 5 days from completing that process, a process that had taken us about 3 years. We were moving people in, following right behind the completion of the construction, and we were about half finished.
When Evey got to the crash site, he found the plane had crashed diagonally through a part of both the new renovation and the old building. Fire, fed by 10,000 gallons of jet fuel, is just beginning to spread. Eventually, it would damage 2 million square feet, almost a third of the building.
It just seemed like a box of puzzle parts that had been dumped on a table. There seemed to be no rhyme nor reason to it at all. The people we had on the building are accustomed to constructing buildings. They're accustomed to building them, not disassembling them and taking them apart. We went out and we hired very, very quickly, overnight, some people who were experts in blast recovery. They'd worked Mexico City, they'd worked Oklahoma City, they'd worked the earlier blast at the Twin Towers in New York, and got them on site as quickly as possible.
Chief among those hires was Alan Kilsheimer, a structural engineer with years of experience in blast recovery. He arrived on site the afternoon of the 11th and has been on the rebuilding job 18 hours a day since.
They asked me to, A, design it, B, be responsible to make sure it's built the way we want it built. I told them we had 3 rules. One is there are no rules, except for my rules, and that they had to keep all the people with paper and all the bureaucrats out of my face. And they did that. I've never seen anything like it. I couldn't get away with this downtown Washington on a private job. I have no rules.
Kilsheimer says his working motto is simple: lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. The reconstruction has brought together an odd couple, the blunt and irreverent Kilsheimer, and the clean-cut and buttoned-down project manager for the Pentagon, Will Colston. The two have been working closely since September 11th. Both say it's a partnership that works.
He may have only been half joking, that he demanded up front that people not be waving pieces of paper in his face, and that instead they wave them in your face. that the stuff that comes cascading down.
That's funny. He's throwing a ton of drawings on top of me, which is in paper itself. But no, no, it's absolutely right. I mean, one of the key things that I do as the project manager for the government is to try to put the contracting methods, to put the funding, to be able to put any of the resources needed in place to support Alan as well as the contractor and the other people working on this job to get it done.
While the fires were still burning, the reconstruction team decided to rebuild the damaged building as quickly as possible. Their goal is to have office workers in at least the outermost section, the building's public face where the jet hit the building, by September 11th of this new year.
Construction people are, they were really upset by this, what happened. It was an attack on them and what they stand for, and they're going to show these people that they can do whatever they want to us, but we're going to recover, and we're going to recover faster than anybody ever imagined from it.
The original Pentagon structure is actually 5 different structures, or wedges, each one a separate entity connected by expansion joints. 5 concentric rings of offices connect the wedges. The plane plowed through 3 rings just to the right of an expansion joint. almost like the first cut in a wedding cake.
If you looked at the photographs early on, you saw a vertical clean line. That was the expansion joint. So everything to the left didn't collapse, and everything to the right collapsed within an hour or two.
On that left side was Wedge 2, part of the unrenovated, original Pentagon with no sprinkler system and tons of asbestos. On the right side was the newly renovated Wedge 1 with a brand new advanced sprinkler system.
That fire went nowhere in Wedge 1. Now, I did get a heck of a lot of water damage in Wedge 1 as a result of that, but the fire went nowhere. Wedge 2, the fire just took off. The heat of the fire was so intense that it damaged the concrete, and it damaged it further than we had initially thought that it had. In some areas, the fire was intense enough that the windows had actually melted.
After the rescue and crime scene personnel left the site in mid-October, demolition crews flattened a 100-yard-wide section of the building. Working around the clock, crews removed 47,000 tons of debris, more than 5,000 dump truck loads. Instead of the usual 6 months, the demolition phase took just a month and a day. Then they immediately began pouring concrete, and they haven't stopped since. Ground was broken for the Pentagon on September 11, 1941, as the United States was about to enter World War II. The building, all 29 acres of it, went up in just 16 months. It was built so fast, the architectural drawings were completed after the fact, creating any number of design headaches. Since the attack, Evie and Kilsheimer have continually explored the site and say they were continually surprised by what they found.
Pick a building code. The Pentagon doesn't comply with it. Okay, we do not comply with a single building code.
It was done differently in 41 than the very sketchy drawings we had showed, or it had been worked on over the years so that we, even today, are still finding things differently than we thought, and we have to keep adjusting what we're doing to accommodate what we uncover.
For example,
there are tunnels and things all in and around here that were done over the years, and we're trying to work around all those things.
Now, I'm going to guess that there was a lot of conduit, cable, communications lines that, because this was a 1941 building, had to be run in suboptimal places.
Yes.
But now that you're building from scratch, you have a chance to do it right and hide those wires.
Yes, it'll be done a lot better than it was before.
The rebuilt part will also be tougher and more resistant to blast damage. In Wedge 1, the newly renovated section of the Pentagon, interlocking steel beam supports and blast-resistant windows, interspersed with a Kevlar or bulletproof type cloth, had just been installed. Evie says they were well worth the cost.
They cost us about $10,000 a piece when you put all the stuff together, the steel, the Kevlar, the windows, etc. When the time came for these windows to account for themselves in less than a second, they worked extraordinarily well. And we strongly believe helped reduce the loss of life and injury in the building.
Those target-hardened window systems are built in a way that's totally unlike any normal replacement window at home.
So these are actually built into the forms that we pour the concrete in. So when we take the forms off the wall, these frames will be in the wall, embedded in the concrete. And then the windows, the blast windows, will attach to this.
So these are purpose-built, designed for this job?
Absolutely.
Is that common?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
There's nothing common to this job.
There's also nothing common about how the workers rebuilding the Pentagon feel about the job they're doing. There's pride in the punishing schedule and the rapid progress.
It's moving kind of fast. Yeah, normally the other projects are a little laid back, but right now, because it's the Pentagon, the boss is asking everybody to pitch in. All who's not going to pitch in, we're letting them go.
I feel a little privileged to be out here. One day when I'm older, I'm going to be able to tell my kids I was there, you know. I did the reconstruction of the Pentagon after the plane went through it.
Supporting everybody out here. I mean, everybody, we come in early and work late. We're trying to get this thing put back together as fast as possible, and everybody's willing to do it. It's like Bin Laden can't come over here and hurt this country, so we can put it back together.
Pentagon historians can't tell their story without September 11th. The groundbreaking in 1941, the attack in 2001, and, if this construction crew has its way, a return to work in a completed new ring on September 11th, 2002.
Finally tonight, another New Year conversation about the United States in the world with American commentators on international affairs. Glenn Eiffel has tonight's.
And joining me is Trudy Rubin, a foreign affairs columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Welcome, Trudy.
Very nice
see you
to
in
be here.
person for a change. You have written in your columns that what separates pre-September 11th from post-September 11th is a new global or an old global reality that we just weren't paying attention to before. Elaborate on that.
9/11 was really a wake-up call. We were living in a very happy 1990s la-la land where I think we didn't understand that being a superpower has costs as well as benefits. Everybody was familiar with the benefits you gain from trade. We were doing phenomenally well economically. Nobody could really challenge us abroad. But what I think most Americans didn't realize was that being a sole superpower breeds resentments, and it breeds more resentments if you handle it casually or arrogantly. And I think they also didn't understand that in the kind of world we live in now, where information and mobility are so easy to come by, and where everyone can move without being tracked, that it was very easy for stateless groups or individuals to harm America, and that a highly industrialized society is very vulnerable to low-tech threats.
But cliches aside, you write that September 11th did not change everything.
No, it didn't change things as much as we think, because I think a lot of the same issues that we were discussing without the same intensity before 9/11 still exist. For example, the whole question of multilateralism versus unilateralism. Certainly, we went into Afghanistan virtually alone. We had an alliance, and the Brits helped us militarily, but basically it was our show. And yet there are still questions about multilateralism that resonate even more strongly after 9/11. For example, if you have failed states like Afghanistan, who is supposed to pick up the pieces? And who is supposed to do the peacekeeping? If you have a situation in Afghanistan where the country could break down again, if the United States isn't involved in strengthening multilateral organizations that can provide the wherewithal and the people and money for that, then it's not going to get done.
So are you saying that the unilateralism that the United States, that this administration was accused of prior to September 11th, will come back in a different form?
I think it never really went away. For example, the issue of how to deal with Russia. It is true that we have a new alliance, an anti-terrorist alliance, but the same questions still resonate. The U.S. has unilaterally decided to pull out of the ABM treaty, and the relationship with Russia is still uncertain, and that needs to be worked out. And the same issues about peacekeeping, about foreign aid that were on the back burner before 9/11 haven't really emerged to the front burner, and I think they will, because they're relevant in dealing with the kind of failed states that breed terrorism.
You talked a moment ago about what happens next, nation building, peacekeeping, whatever you want to call it. But you also have written that in order to, the United States can't get into this war without planning to win it. What is winning in a war like this? How do you define that?
Winning, I think, is a word that is now, needs to be redefined after the fighting is over in Afghanistan. Winning does not mean ending terrorism, because terrorism is a phenomena that was with us before 9/11, and there will always be terrorists at some level. There are always local conflicts that will breed terrorism. And it doesn't mean that we will be able to wipe it out everywhere in the world, because local conflicts, whether it's ETA in Spain for Basque separatism or the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, are going to be there. We can give advice, we can help cut off funds, we can share intelligence, but winning in terms of Afghanistan, I think we have already done what I would think of as winning.
Can the United States claim any kind of real victory if bin Laden has not been captured?
Yes, and I think bin Laden probably will be captured, because I think somebody will sell him out. I think that the elements that we have achieved, which are extremely important, we have broken his charismatic glow. Bin Laden on Al Jazeera will not have the same impact. People see the fraudulence of his dreams of rebuilding an Islamic radical caliphate in the whole world. So we've struck a blow in this regard in discrediting radical Islamism. It won't go away, but we have achieved something. Pakistan, crucial. General Musharraf made an incredibly courageous speech, is basically trying to do just what many Pakistanis had dreamt of and hoped, which is end the Talibanization of his society. These are real victories.
Is it possible to replicate this kind of victory that has happened in Afghanistan, if that's what it is, in Iraq? That's the big debate.
Right. You can't just take the template and transfer it. One big difference, there's no Northern Alliance, there's no Southern Alliance. The Iraqi National Congress once had a base in northern Iraq. President Clinton basically sold them out in 1996. They don't have the fighting force on the ground. There are some Iraqi exiles in Iran. It's not clear if they could come across to fight or if they're still Islamists or have changed their tune. That's one big difference. A second big difference is you have to convince Iraq's neighbors and Iraqis themselves that we're serious. We called on them to rise in 1991. We sold them out then too. They rose, were smashed by Saddam. So you have a harder sell. In Afghanistan, people believed we would fight to the end. In Iraq, you will have to convince people, and you will have to count on convincing them and then having Iraqis rise.
Another difficult part of this puzzle is what's happening in the Israeli-Palestinian question. You have written that you've never seen it this bad. Is it because it is getting lost in the Afghanistan swirl, or is it its own intractable issue that the United States hasn't figured out how to cope with?
I don't think it's insoluble. At the moment, it seems intractable. Obviously, the U.S. attention was taken away from it, although at this horrible phase, even with new attention paid, it's not so clear that you can move. One plus, if we do go after Saddam Hussein and succeed, is that I think that might be the lever that could unleash a new peace process in Israel and with the Palestinians, because if that threat were taken away, I think there would be a lot of changes in the Arab world. It would make it easier to deal with Israel and the Palestinians.
But you've written that Yasser Arafat is a failed leader, tragic failed leader, I think were your words. Is he the one we still have to deal with in order to work this through in spite of that?
At the moment, there is not an apparent alternative. After Arafat is either chaos or Hamas. If one wants to cultivate an alternative amongst Palestinians themselves, because they have to pick the new leadership, there are people on the Palestinian side who are very clear in the commitment to two states, no more, final end to conflict. And Israel has to cultivate those people. But unfortunately, leaders like Sari Nusseibeh and Mustafa Barghouti have been arrested recently, although released after a few hours. Mustafa Barghouti, a prominent doctor, heads medical relief committees, very moderate, beaten up. This is not the way to deal with moderate leaders that might be the future.
Okay, and finally, I do want to throw some of your words back at you and have you respond. You wrote at one point in October, perhaps these dark days will produce some positive legacy, shock some leaders into wiser behavior. It may only be a dream, but I can't bear to wake up yet. Have you awakened yet?
I actually am hopeful to a certain extent about the Middle East after this, because I see the beginnings of debate. I am thrilled with what is happening in Pakistan. The debate in the United States, however, I don't think has been engaged yet, because we do have to debate what kind of a superpower we want to be in the world, what we need and want to do beyond military, and how to reach out, better trade policies, more opening to third world trade, more aid. We can't solve the world's problems, but if we're the sole superpower, we have to do more than provide weapons.
Trudy Rubin, thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
We'll continue this series next week with Tom Friedman of the New York Times. And again, the major developments of this day. A federal grand jury issued a new indictment against the alleged shoe bomber, Richard Reed. He was charged with attempted murder and 7 other crimes. The U.S. military said it has increased its presence in the Philippines to fight terrorism, and a gunman killed 3 people at the Appalachian School of Law in southwestern Virginia. The school's dean was among the dead. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening. I'm Jim Lehrer. Thank you and good night.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
Imagine a world where no child begs for food. While some will look on that as a dream, others will look long and hard and get to work. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
And by SBC Communications. In the last year alone, SBC employees volunteered more than 6 million hours, which means even when we're not working to improve communications, we're doing something to help improve communities. SBC Communications.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. Video cassettes of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer are available from PBS Video. Call 1-800-328-PBS-1.
This is PBS.
Funding for local broadcast of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by viewers like you and by the following.
Safe Corporation, working for Oregon to prevent on-the-job injuries and to manage the cost of workers' compensation insurance. Safe, on the job for Oregon.
Centennial Bank, specializing in business banking with tailored products and personalized service to help Northwest companies grow. Centennial Bank, open for business.
It's a cycle that has been repeated for thousands of years in vineyards all over the world. But this year in Northern Oregon, things will be a little different. Find out what it's really like to live a life in vine.
That's tonight at 8:30 here on OPB.
I want so much to please you.
Every student
Your life will never be the same from this morning on.
takes away something
I want you to tell me.
from a great teacher.
You crossed the line, sweetie. Ruth, are you jealous?
You thought I'd be threatened by your success?
You taught me to be ruthless.
Linda Lavin, Samantha Mathis,
Some things you don't touch.
Collected Stories on PBS Hollywood Presents.
That's tonight at 9 here on OPB. Funding for this evening's programming on OPB has been provided by viewers like you and by the following.
Scan Design, offering Scandinavian home and office furniture from stores in Eugene, Beaverton, and Portland.
I don't want to lose her.
15 kids on the verge.
This is my future.
One school.
I'm a pizza, right?
One last year.
But there's always that one piece missing of the pie.
Next time on Senior Year.
Here on OPB, Friday night at 10:30.
Northwest Rugs, unquestionably the largest quality retail rug source west of the Mississippi, is hosting what is unquestionably the largest rug clearance sale in Oregon's history on over 10,000 handcrafted and machine-made rugs from the world's most famous looms. Runners, rounds, squares, large rugs or small. We have thousands and thousands of affordably priced rugs from traditional to modern, now price reduced for immediate clearance. Northwest Rugs, Wilsonville Tiger Tennisbourne and Jansen Beach.
Take a good look at this chicken. Can you find the nuggets on it? Neither could we. Introducing chicken breast strips from Carl's Jr. Because chickens don't have nuggets.